Welcome to Falcons Drip, your go-to source for Falcons news and draft coverage. I'm Thon, founder and voice of Falcons Drip.
Welcome back, everybody, to Falcons Drip Radio. Today, I'm joined by my co-host, as always, and back on the podcast for a second time, we have John Vogel. And today, we're going to go over the Falcons draft picks. I think we'll start with Bijan and then give you some other episodes later on for the later guys. So, John, what's going on?
A lot. It's been busy. Got a whole bunch of different things coming down the pipeline that just, it's been insane. From local high school stuff to new leagues starting and all kinds of crazy things. So, it's been wild. So I'm glad that I got an opportunity to get on here with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. It was like a week after the first time you were on here. It felt like I was seeing all sorts of stuff popping up for you, all sorts of different projects.
Yeah, because Draft Blitz, where I was working, prior, shut down effectively, and so I had to move a bunch of things around to kind of try to, support everything that I was still doing. I had a lot of opportunities, a lot were presented to me. I had to turn a lot down. It was insane. It was an insane time period for a couple of weeks there where, it was humbling a little bit, because you put so much work into something and to get good at a certain craft and to kind of see it recognized. It was obvious, like I said, humbling, but it also reaffirming, it's to the work that I'm doing and, the analysis that I'm providing and all that good stuff. So, obviously really grateful to everybody. NFL Draft Lounge, where I'm putting up most of this content now. Everybody who's bought my draft guide up to this point, that thing is selling really well right now. And because there's really nothing like it on the market. It's a live draft guide essentially where, it's a OneNote document. I'm updating it every day. I'm watching tape, getting information, putting it in there, pulling stuff, from NFL sources as well. So it's not just my opinion. It's, NFL, what the NFL kind of sees them of these players that are coming up in not just 24, but 25 and 26. And it's pretty extensive. So 3,000 prospects in there right now and probably a whole lot more to come.
That's a lot.
That's an insane amount of work. 3,000 prospects.
What's kind of nice is I built this over the last couple of years, because what I used to do is I used to cut off. If you weren't draft eligible, just moved on. I'll look at you next year or whenever you're draft eligible. And that was sort of hindering me to a certain extent with some of the work. Because when I sit down and I watch a game, even when it's on TV or I'm at a game, like I go do these bowl games and stuff sometimes and I see players pop off. I need to be taking notes on what I'm seeing anyways. So I had to find some way to organize it and keep it all straight so that, draft eligible people are there, but I'm also covering everybody else, because down the road, hey, that's a guy that I looked at. Oh, he was a true freshman and I saw this, and this. And, so that's all in there.
Very cool.
That's awesome. It gives people a perspective of how they developed as they went through their college career.
Correct. Yeah. And sometimes though, I'll kind of get away from, I'll readjust the notes, right? So if I've got grades right now on players that ended up going back to college that I thought were going to come out last year, Spencer Rattler, Bo Nix, players like that. So those grades will adjust throughout the year. If I see something different, if they show some improvement in, let's say, their football IQ, the way that they're processing things, well, that's going to change and the grade will be updated to fit that. So, it's basically getting a draft guide that has everything that, it's updated daily and it has all this, it's live, it's constantly changing.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So
which everyone's looking for draft content, which they can find, which is constantly giving them all the scoop they need to know who's going to get drafted, who's maybe there for the next year. So it's awesome you're doing that.
Yeah, and it's been really nice too because it's not just fans that buy this. There's other analysts that have bought it. There's personnel directors that have bought it. Even at other schools. At different leagues, different levels, because it's so deep in terms of the prospects that there's a little bit of something for everybody there. And the transfer portal is insane. If you haven't kept up with college football at all, I tried to keep up with the transfer portal the first week. I made it 2 days in. And I was like, yeah, no, it's not happening. I'm gonna have to come through and fix this on the spring and the summer. And I'm still updating it. I'm still finding guys I didn't realize had transferred somewhere. So
Yeah, it's hard, especially with that those lower level schools.
mhm.
The FCS ones, the lower FBS ones, because those don't get reported widely by big pages, so you can't check like the on threes, the 24/7. So you kind of just have to find their Twitter commitment or their Twitter announcement.
Twitter, Instagram. Sometimes the local beat reporters have something on them. And even sometimes, like, you find out guys retired. There's a lot of guys that just, they medically retired or they just quit football, and there's no notice of guys that just quit. A lot of times the teams don't even at the higher levels of football, they don't talk about that. So
yeah, which is super crazy to see guys retire like that. Because you think they get to that level, there's no way they're going to retire, but sometimes unforeseen circumstances lead to that. With that, y'all want to get into talking about Bijan?
Let's do it. Let's talk some Falcons. So, John, let's start with week one. Well, week one. Let's start with round one. Bijan goes to Atlanta. What was your take when you saw them read the card?
So I think my initial reaction was I was not surprised, right? And, I think some of us were kind of interested to see where some of these teams would be heading and where the evolution of personnel would be going. And so the first thing that kind of popped off at me was the Falcons had just acquired Jonnu Smith, correct? That was right before the draft. They'd made the trade, had gotten him from the Patriots after, which was a great pairing because Jonnu, when he was with Arthur Smith at Tennessee, was a very effective receiver, did a lot of different things like that. And so when I saw that trade go through, I thought, okay, well, they're loading up. They want to have a strong 12 personnel package, one running back, 2 tight ends on the field. But then you come into the draft in the first round, you take a guy like Bijan, who he's a mismatch across not even just as a running back. You could put him in wide receiver. You could put him in the slot. He's very similar in a lot of ways, like a much better version of Cordell Patterson. So what I saw with that was this might be a new trend that you're going to see. And I think the Lions did this. The Packers loaded up for this. There were several teams that through the draft, you could kind of see the signs. Teams are starting to load up for 22 personnel this year, which is very interesting. So the reason I'm going straight to personnel with this is because 3 of the top 4 teams that finished the season, it's 4 teams that played in the conference championships. 3 of them ran 12 personnel more than anybody else in the league. And 12 personnel was accredited, to being the mismatch problem that allowed them to get into those positions to be at the championship game. So basically, when you have a nickel defense that you're going up against and you've got that nickel defender, you've got to find a way to create a mismatch against him because he's taking away typically your slot receiver option and making it very difficult for him to be productive. So the way that you can do that is you can counter with size. And that's what these teams did with 12, bringing 2 tight ends on the field, forcing them to go back into their base where they might not be as strong personnel-wise at this point. So 22 would be the next step, especially if you have running backs that you can bring out of the backfield, right? And that you can put into the slot, that you can motion, you can line up in a full house with a tight end on the line. And all of a sudden you've got Cordell Patterson or Bijan flexing out. How does the defense adjust to that with their coverages? Are they going man across the board? Are they playing zone? How do you react to that? And I think that's what the pick kind of told me. Arthur Smith has big plans for this offense this year. And they're kind of doing what the Eagles did with Jalen Hurts a couple of years ago let's see what you got, Desmond Ridder. We're going to give you all the weapons. We're going to give you everything that you could possibly need to be successful. Now, all you got to do is go out here and run this offense. Bijan is a huge part of adding another weapon with size, maintaining everyone, keeping that size across the board. You've got Drake London on the outside. You've got these 2 tight ends, Kyle Pitts, Jonnu Smith. Now you've got Cordell Patterson, Bijan. These are all 6 foot plus, 215-pound plus athletes, that you can put out and they can play a bunch of different roles. So my initial impression was this offense just got a whole lot scarier. And I think it's going to cover for any real issues that you're going to have with, let's say, any quarterback. Let's say Desmond Ridder doesn't have the processing ability, doesn't have whatever that is that's going to keep him from being a top quarterback in the league. Bijan helps you really cover for that, because now you add him to the weapons that are there, and it really minimizes the mistakes that he's going to make as a young quarterback.
Positionless football, and coming into the draft, and something that you and I had talked about. I don't know if we talked about in the episode you were on or off air. Bijan Robinson to me would have been a top 3 wide receiver in this draft class.
Yeah, give or take. Yeah, he could have been.
Like
if he really wanted to be a wide receiver, yeah.
It was him, JSN, and Gibbs were like my 3 of my top 5 guys if they were receivers. So like for me, I don't think I was not shocked either. I don't think Kyle was something we had talked about. Obviously, we wanted to go defense, but we certainly weren't upset at this at all. When you go with the best player available, and possibly the best player in the draft.
I think we talked about this when I was on last time too, which was, them loading up with all the defensive weapons and free agency and making the acquisitions, getting Jeff Okudah, they really put the money into the defense, I think, and then really focused on, okay, well, with our first couple picks in this draft, let's solidify that offense and make it what we want it to be, which is, you're going to have to outscore people too. Like that's a big part that people, defense wins championships. Yeah, but you need a good offense to go with it too, a capable one. And Bijan gives you another weapon, to go out there and make that offense successful. So I really liked it, considering the options that were on the board. Like I understood a lot of people wanted Nolan Smith. I understand a lot of people wanted Jalen Carter. I'm personally very happy that my Eagles got them. But, I can kind of see why you go with a Bijan here, because how much do those guys really improve the nucleus of the defense straight up if you don't have all the pieces already? Whereas a guy like Bijan can take the offense almost by himself to another level.
And you had said in the last time you were on, like you thought they were going to take JSN. Well, they've taken, in my opinion, similar to JSN, right? A slot player, but now who can also play running back and, like we said, positionless football.
And I think Arthur Smith, he said that too, or maybe it was Thomas. No, it's not. Dimitroff isn't the GM there anymore, is he?
It's Terry Font now.
That's right, Fontaine. That's right.
So have your head for that.
Yeah. Sorry. No, I had this this account that was like Terry it was that dude's burner. Dimitroff's burner, that was following me and commenting on my stuff for a long time, and that's what I think of when I think of Falcons, is that him in that stupid account. But sorry, no. But I think that he had even said that too, which was we think Bijan's a positionless guy. We really like his ability in all the different places, so we can get him in this offense. He's very similar to Cordell, and then you have Tyler Algier still in the mix too, which is. That's just a potent offense. It gives you a lot of weapons to mix up your personnel. And that's kind of the other thing I wonder what we're looking at with the direction of this team is each player isn't going to be called upon evenly every single game. You're going to pick certain players to be the focal point, depending on the matchups that you're going up against. And I think that when you add an option like Bijan that helps facilitate that, where Bijan, he might not be a top guy against a top run defense, right? At that point, you're going to try to get your tight ends more involved. You're going to try to open up opportunities for Drake London and those running and Cordell Patterson out of the backfield. So Bijan might not be as effective in that type of a setup where you're going to get all this direction going to open up Bijan and Tyler Algier to running. But, it really makes me wonder about not wonder, but there's a lot of flexibility that you have from a game planning standpoint at this point, which is that's what Bill Belichick made a career out of doing in New England, was getting all of these guys that were really talented together and specific traits. The only difference is Arthur's getting a lot of guys that can do a lot of everything. So makes it very difficult as a defense to game plan against, especially early in the season when you don't know how any of these guys are going to be used.
Absolutely. And when you were watching Bijan in college, when did you know, okay, here's a guy who will take the running, who's a running back that will be a first round guy, a transcendent talent to the NFL?
Well, I think that conversation started before I ever watched him, and I think it was when he was a freshman. I mean, like I'd seen Texas games and clips of him, but I hadn't studied him.
Yeah.
I think that started when he was a freshman. For me,
the end of his freshman year, I believe.
yeah, and for me, I think it was. I mean, you turn on the tape on this guy, and you're like, okay, yeah, he's a super high first round. Now, with my person, if I was putting a team together personally, I think that sometimes he's a little too shifty and he tries to pull off too many moves. I like one cut guys personally, which it's not a knock on Bijan or to say that he's going to be bad or anything. Just saying that, depending on scheme, there's certain places Bijan is going to be less successful because some teams want one cut running backs. And sometimes you see him going into the hole. And there was a clip I remember seeing where he pulled off this juke in slow motion where it was like a quadruple juke going back, forth, back, forth, back, forth. And when you play it in slow motion, it looks full speed, so he's got insane quickness and body control, but it's really with him, it's more, it's the schematic of versatility that he offers, being able, I think, I didn't realize he was as great of a receiver until I went back and I watched the Alabama game where he really was right before Quinn Ewers got hurt. He was really stretching the field and he was really torching them with his receiving ability. I hadn't seen a lot of that in the other games and stuff. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, well, okay, well, that's Alabama's defense too. That's not a particularly soft pass defense, and the other thing that's exciting about that, if you're a Falcons fan, is a lot of defenses. We've been talking about this on the Sick podcast a lot, talking about match quarters and all those different coverages that have really taken over defenses in the NFL. That's all Saban's defenses, right? Saban's influence. Saban really started a lot of this, or brought to prevalence this match quarters type stuff that a lot of the teams in the NFL are running right now. And I think that when you kind of take that into consideration, and the fact that he was doing that against that match quarters defense, there's a lot of defenses Bijan can do that against in the NFL.
Absolutely.
And I want to ask, who is good comparison for Bijan? I know there's not a lot of great comparisons because he's so good of a player, but one of the ones that's currently in the NFL that comes to mind for me is kind of like a Nick Chubb, but a little bit better of a receiving threat.
Yeah, I would say maybe Nick Chubb in between the tackles and Kareem Hunt outside of the tackles, and that's kind of, if you think about what the Browns did when they had both of those players on the team, that's what they really used them for. Was Nick was more of the inside the tackles runner because he's very savvy. As I like to say, he works the wormhole, right? When you watch a flowing gap with the way defenders are trying to crash on it, with the way it's being blocked, a gap is never going to be a straight line. It's going to be flowing, almost like, when you're watching Contact from like 2001 with Matthew McConaughey and I forget who the female actress was in that movie, but they go through wormholes, and that's what it is. It's like this flowing, constantly changing hole. And there's certain guys that read that really well when you see that type of action on the field. And that's what Chubb does really well. Bijan usually sees that really well too and can follow it and run through it. And then outside the tackles is more about athletic ability, making guys miss, making the first defender miss, coming downhill, breaking angles and stuff like that. Bijan does that really well too. So, there's not really a player that has his skill set is kind of the issue. A running back with that build coming out of the backfield that can catch really well, that runs inside and outside the tackles. I think Bijan is kind of going to be in his own category in that sense, where there's just not a player like him. Now, does that make him a great fantasy option? I don't know. I hope so. I would think so. But, when it comes to like Bijan on the field, like when you're trying to evaluate skill sets, and what can these guys do? What are their strengths? There's not a lot of guys really ever that have had his combination, especially since running backs have only become receiving threats in the last 10 years.
Nick Chubb is a great running back. He's probably a top 3 in the league, and the fact that he doesn't really compare with his skill set, and the fact that he's not as great of an outside runner, a receiving threat, just speaks to the type of generational talent Bijan is.
Yeah, and the other thing too is the offensive line that he runs behind too. Like with a running back, that's a big thing. You know, like Leonard Fournette is a great example. Leonard Fournette with LSU, when you watch him back then, that guy was a absolute beast, and he had a great offensive line that he was running behind LSU. They dominated the SEC. And then he comes up to Jacksonville, and they really struggle, because outside of that one year, they make that AFC Championship run. And then even in Tampa Bay, not a great offensive line, going through a lot of injuries. He's not productive until they can build that chemistry together. I think that has a lot to do with it too. I'm not saying the Chubb isn't a top 3, top 5 running back in the league, but that really sells, you know, a running back and where they stand in the league is the offensive line. The Falcons have it. You know what I'm saying? Like, they've got a loaded offensive line, so that's not going to be an issue, I don't think.
The top 3, I believe, is the top 3 running backs for yards over expected were last year were number 3 was Cordell Patterson, number 2 is Tyler Algier, and number 1 was Caleb Huntley. So all 3 Falcons running backs.
See? And Caleb Huntley, too. The other thing about him was that was a guy that went, 6th round, 5th round?
Caleb Huntley went undrafted.
Undrafted? Okay.
At Ball State.
Yep.
Yeah, so because I remember him at Ball State. I remember when he came out, and I remember there were a lot of people that were really excited about him, like, you know, lower tier analysts and stuff, you know, guys that really get deep into, this guy, he's got a chance to be really good.
Yeah.
Again, offensive line pairings.
His running style, and he's obviously, you know, not as good, but his running style, there's something about Caleb Huntley that reminds me of Jerome Bettis. I don't really know what it is, but when I watch him, I go, whoa. I don't know why they look so alike when they're running.
It's the low center of gravity, I think, because Bettis had that insane low center of gravity. That's why they called him the bus, because he could run over people like that. And it was because his center of gravity is so damn low. And I think that's kind of Huntley too, where he gets so low to the ground, and he's not as big as Bettis, but he's got the thighs. He certainly kind of looks like it.
He's like 3 inches shorter, and I think like 30 pounds lighter.
Yeah.
But he just, the style just looks so.
Absolutely, I see that too.
Yeah. So I know. I think, like you said, who knows what'll happen in fantasy. This offense feels like, fantasy or not, the offense feels like it's ready to really start making moves in 2023.
Yeah, agreed. Absolutely. And with just the versatility that he offers from a game planning schematic standpoint with the weapons that are already there is insane.
Mm-hmm. And it's like, who do you try and stop? Do you try and stop the running game? Do you try and stop Drake London, Kyle Pitts?
And what are they going to do with Desmond Ridder? Is he going to be a part of the running game?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I wouldn't want him to be, but that's part of his game. You know, it's just like, it's like Lamar. I'm not saying don't compare him to Lamar Jackson, but I'm saying with Lamar Jackson, you don't want him to be a part of the running game, but that's how he plays quarterback. So you have to let him be a part of the running game, and he's going to take those hits that you don't want him to take. So is that what they're going to do with Ridder? Are they going to let him take some of those hits they don't want? How comfortable are they with the back end, you know, the backup and the third string quarterback, you know, because Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields, these guys have all missed time, you know, with injuries in the last couple of years. So how comfortable are you with your guy getting into those situations and taking those unnecessary hits? That's the other question. I don't know how they're going to use him.
I will say Falcons should be very comfortable with their backup. Taylor Heineke being this guy who's been basically a starter almost the whole year for the past couple seasons. After like the quarterback in front of him goes down, or the guy they were signed to start goes down, and he's been relatively reliable as you can get for a backup. So I think you should be pretty comfortable if you wanted to run the ball with Desmond Ridder.
If nothing else,
Heineke doesn't have the athletic ability. He's a scrambler. He can improv a little bit, but no, he's not the athlete that we've seen Ridder be. You know, so that's the other. How much the offense has to change if Heineke comes in, right? Like that's the other thing too.
If nothing else, it'll be fun with Heineke back there. Like he's one of the most fun quarterbacks. He's like Ryan Fitzpatrick without the beard. Like he just
he'll have a beard at some point once he's in the league long enough.
Not like that though.
I don't know. Have you seen the beer that guy drinks?
But just he'll just throw the ball up and let his playmakers go get it. Where, you know, last year Marcus Mariota was super conservative and sometimes wouldn't throw those balls. On the other side, I think he's just going to sling it, and it'll be fun, even if something were to happen to Ritter.
Yeah.
So I look forward to just whatever ends up happening this year. Before we start moving on to, before we move on to some of the other draft picks, anything else you feel like we should know about Bijan? Anything else you want to say? Anything we should be kind of keeping our eyes out for?
I mean, I think I hit everything because the way that I explain things, I go straight to the backstory, right? And I'm like, I have to build the point that I'm about to make. So I have to bring in the context. And the real context is the 22 personnel. Mm-hmm. I really think that you're going to see a lot of that next year because the Lions, the Eagles, the Packers, a lot of the NFC loaded up in tight ends and running backs this offseason. And that really just spells, hey, we're going to try to take advantage of this nickel defense, these smaller linebackers, these more athletic linebacker types that are coming in. And we're going to see if we can't neutralize these 4-man fronts that are starting to dominate. Everybody's going to a 4-3 defense. And I think it was Mark Gorsak with the Steelers. We were talking about this like 2019, where he was saying, hey, the 3-4s, like everybody's going away from that. There'll be a couple teams that he's like, Bill will stay with them. Talking about Bill Belichick. He'll stay with it because now he can get those guys at a discount, which of course that's what they've done. But the 4-man front was designed to stop Jim Brown and the Cleveland Browns running offense. And so when you take that into consideration and think of what a 4-3 defense is designed to stop the run, and everybody's going to that in a pass-heavy league because of the advantage that you get with the two defensive ends coming off the edge. Where it's a pass-heavy league, so I think you're going to see a lot more run, and that means 22 personnel with 2 actual running backs, not a fullback. 2 running backs on the field with the 2 tight ends.
Yeah, it'll be exciting for sure. So, final thing on Bijan, draft grade for that round.
Oh man, draft grades are like 4 years out, man. You know what I'm saying? Like I like the pick. I like all the picks is the problem because I see what teams are trying. Well, not all the picks. Sean Clifford in the 5th round of the Packers made no sense whatsoever. But like I see what teams are trying to do. And whether they hit or not, there's so many variables that come in. Draft grades are like, they're very popular with media and talking points and stuff. It's just, I can't give you substance and say, oh yeah, this is a great draft pick, right? They're all great draft picks. They're all taken for a reason, and most of the time, whether, okay, there are guys, they take guys so that this team doesn't get them. Mm-hmm. But in all honesty, it's just like, I see what they're trying to do from a team building aspect. And this is a really good, solid piece. And everything that I know about Bijan being the person that he is, the businessman that he is, the professional that he is, I'm not worried about that.
Awesome.
Again, this is Thon Ray. You guys can follow us at Falcons_drip on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Please make sure you subscribe, follow, whatever you need to do to get the alert for our next episode. If you guys enjoyed today, please leave us a review. It always helps us grow. Until then, see you next time. Rise up.